right, man. It's your boys, James and Rob, man, and we are coming together to talk about the Predators, man, and what they were doing in Predators, Killers of Killers. Was it Killer of Killers?
Yes.
And, just to start us out, man, I have, well, both of us have been long term Predator fans for probably most of our lives. Specifically me, Rob, I have been watching the Predator movie probably as young as like 5 years old, and I'm 41. So, I've been along the ride since the beginning of the series. Uh, got familiar with comics, particularly I remember because my cousin had the bats for the Batman versus Predator series. And ironically, Batman is one of the superheroes that I dislike the most in the comics, but that's neither here or there. But basically, I've been a long time fan. So this is something that I've been looking forward to. But before I get into how I feel, James, what's your interaction with the series?
For me personally, I didn't really gravitate towards Predator or started becoming a fan until AVP.
Mm-hmm.
That set off a chain reaction of fandom that I'll never get away from.
Okay, so your first interaction was AVP, which was Alien versus Predator. So that's the movie
Yes.
with Sanaa Lathan and
Yes.
them
And
introducing. Okay.
and considering like how well or people did or didn't receive the movie, that's neither here nor there for me. It was just the hype behind those two different alien species fighting.
Right.
And that's sold me completely. And it made me go back and jump into the other movies and made me understand what I was looking at.
So just for reference purposes, did you like AVP?
Personally, yes.
Okay. Okay. And you ain't see nothing wrong with that movie. The first one.
No, it definitely has its issues. Like I definitely have gripes, but like those gripes, like that tone goes along with a lot of the later Predator movies that we've seen lately too.
Okay. So that this it's interesting to point out that me and you have like two different vantage points because not to get too deep,
Mm-hmm.
it's not that AVP was a bad film in terms of like technicality, but contextually as it pertains to the source material. And what I mean by source material, when you bring two rated R franchises together, how it equates to a PG-13 outing doesn't make sense outside of corporate greed in terms of merchandising towards younger individuals.
And
Uh,
you're right, and they were able to do things like games that have certain contents from like the way that movie is set up. It carved out its own canon per se, like carved out its own universe that doesn't fit necessarily with the Alien franchise or the Predator franchise. It's like this weird middle ground.
yeah. So anyway, but it's actually I'm actually now that I'm thinking about it, I'm really glad that you brought up that movie because that movie was the beginning of the disappointment for me for the Predator movies or Predators being in movies. Okay, because with this iteration of Predator, Predator, Killer of Killers, I ultimately did not like that film, and I know that a lot of people liked it. Um, and so just getting into, I guess, my reactions of it. Whew. First story. Let's start there. And I'm gonna be real quick. Did not like that this Viking lady, it has nothing to do with her being a lady, but the way that I imagine going into the past is that even though the predators are primitive, people are primitive with their weapons, um, intellect, like so many things about us are behind, right? But you're introducing an alien species that at minimum has interstellar travel. Would you agree?
Right?
Right.
Absolutely. Be technology beyond our imagination.
Exactly. And they're super strong. Like you've seen the first movie. Arnold Schwarzenegger in that film is anywhere between 225, 250 pounds. As you know, maybe for movie purposes, they may have listed him at 180 just, for character purposes. But any type of being that can pick you up by the neck off your feet and pin you up against something is hella strong. And to be able to backhand you, have you fly several feet into the air and land away from you, super strong. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Climbing and carrying a body like of a grown man, like I said, minimum 200 some odd pounds, super strong. So
Effortless.
how this so how the Predator struggled, in my opinion, especially that big beefy one that the Viking lady was going up against. How she was even able to beat a Predator with her primitive weapons, because she had a shield that was like decapitating people.
It would seem as if like her dual wielding shields, like it may seem as if she sharpened those edges to be lethal.
And to me, it's like, come on now, we're talking about, like, I forget what year that one was set in, but I feel like it was something anywhere between like 15 to 1600, in terms of the years. But I just couldn't I just couldn't get with it, man. Like, it was too far of a stretch that she was like that strong to be able to do that, not just, to withstand a predator in battle, but even the stuff that she was doing to regular people, like decapitating people with a shield, bro. Even though it has, like, obviously it has steel at the edge of it, but the
Right.
way in which she
That's the
was,
only way I've rationalized like a shield being used in that way.
but
Like the edges had to be sharpened to a fine point.
yeah, and but it was just like, but for that time period, man, like, she would have to have like immeasurable strength to be able to do that with that technology back then. So I just had a very hard time buying that first, I guess short story, um, just from the beginning. So that really set the tone for me that this was not going to be an enjoyable ride. Okay. And then the technology that the Predator was using, and just for the audience purposes, I have a problem with Hollywood going back in time and meddling with the Predator. James, I don't know how you feel about that, but to me,
It's a catch-22 for me. There's highs and lows in this for me.
mm-hmm.
Some of it is more surface level, and some of it gets a little more technical. But we'll talk about that a little later.
Okay. Well, for me, I have an issue with them going into the past, because now you're going to be doing things that to me doesn't make sense. Like, we've already established that these predators have the ability for interstellar travel, right? So that means that, like, regardless, their technology, as long as they are visiting Earth, they're going to be technologically more advanced than we are. So the further back in time that you go and place the predators, the more ridiculous it becomes that predators get beat by humans, in my opinion. So, and we'll, like I said, we'll get into the details of that a little later. Um, so when they do this, like I said, it just becomes difficult for me to accept it, because this predator, the big beefy one, he had like a sonic boom arm cannon that he had to crank up in order to use, and
Right.
I'm just like, this is
So before we start moving along too far,
yeah,
I just want
please.
to highlight the one very good thing about this and what I think they were going for with this representation.
I'm listening.
The animation style. I think this was more of just pure entertainment
Mm-hmm.
than giving us actual or substantial Predator story to land on, which is what I think that they would do with Badlands. Because as it stands, Predator's unique storytelling and perspectives that has plateaued.
You think so?
I mean, if I'm not mistaken, the last 3 or 4 movies, it's hard to wrap your mind around how the Predators lose in the final battle.
I don't think that they've plateaued. I just think that
I think they plateaued in their storytelling and how they describe how a predator loses in a film. But
Well,
I think they're going to get away from that in Badlands. I think the what they did with the animation caught me by surprise. I wasn't expecting to enjoy the way it looked, but after doing a little research, I discovered that they used Unreal Engine. They blended 3D animation with 2D textures. You know what I'm saying? Color skills and
mm-hmm,
color stills.
mm-hmm,
And from what I gathered, it's one of the first movies to do that in Hollywood. So like they captured the gore and the savageness of like quote unquote of Predator films, but again, we hit that plateau in storytelling where we ultimately end up seeing the same thing. Now the plot ended up being a little different, but ultimately, like when we see predators die, it's just hard to be believable.
very hard to be believable. But going with the animation, see, I wasn't necessarily moved by it because I feel like we've seen that with Into the Spider Verse, and at times, even though it wasn't this way with this animation, with Into the Spider Verse, it was at times it was very difficult to kind of see.
No,
It,
it almost comes off like
comic
a
booky.
completely digital claymation type of vibe.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I thought I wouldn't enjoy it, but like honestly, I would say I liked it because I thought I would hate it.
Mm-hmm,
So I would give them props for like the way they handled how things looked,
mm-hmm.
especially like the gore and like the fighting. Like it looked good, but the story and how things play out, that's another thing.
I'm about to say, you got any other good things you want to put out there? Because I don't have many.
I mean, that's it's funny because that's ultimately where I stopped with it.
Cause man, I like I said, I'm
It
just
ultimately like it's going to be a full circle conversation. So like a lot of the things that I point out that I had dissatisfaction with, I think it'll change once we start talking about other things later on.
okay. So I'll go ahead and just go ahead and wrap up my dislikes because honestly, like I said, I don't actually really have anything that I really liked about this film at all. Um, so yeah, the first story I felt like was just ridiculous. Could not buy into the Viking lady beating that big beefy predator, even with his crank up arm, sonic boom cannon. I just, I felt like he should have had different technology, but whatever. And just her beating him, it like my imagination doesn't go that far. Like, in terms of the Predators, and it just made me upset. Like, you guys are really nerfing these dudes. Then fast forward to the second short story with the brothers, right? The ninja and the samurai. The story in and of itself, though it wasn't a lot of talking, was more interesting. Howsoever, comma, the predator in that one, like, for lack of a better word, blew me. Like, you are going up against, mainly he was chasing the ninja brother, right? And
Uh-huh.
what a ninja's known for.
Still,
Exactly. So it's like you got this predator that is abusing at this point the camouflage. Have no problem with that. But you're chasing down a ninja and a guy that is utilizing stealth, even though you can see him, through heat vision. You as a predator are making yourself a loud, bumbling fool chasing after him because literally, if the predator would have kept still and used a bit of like trying to conceal its own noise, would have beat that ninja easily before he linked up with his brother. But like again, it's like you have to nerf these predators in order to make them beatable and make them beatable in ways that is very hard to swallow. So even though it was touching about the brothers and that whole story with them was decent, and I don't have really real problems with them, that predator I had a problem with. Third story, that was probably the worst one of all. Because you're talking, was it a P-51 Mustang going up against a spaceship, bro? A spaceship. And in that spaceship, this dude is using a heat-seeking harpoon.
mm-hmm.
Heat-seeking harpoon. Not lasers, not any, because like again, we this is the problem that I have with Hollywood doing these Predator films in the past, because the technology that they have and the technology that they're using in their hunt does not make sense to me. One of my friends said that perhaps it's a thing of where they're lowering themselves to make the hunt more challenging.
Okay, but this is where I wanted to jump in because I did want you. I wasn't myself going to go through each story and explain my dislikes. Just overall, I did want you to go through and finish your idea
Mm-hmm.
because what I will say is contextually, it doesn't show you in the film or that or that or the product itself. It doesn't come out and say it. But a lot of the times, especially in the last few films we've gotten from them, these are instances of bad blood predators. Meaning they
Okay.
whatever
The more
clan
aggressive, the more aggressive ones.
wherever clan they come from, like they don't adhere to those rules or honor code anymore. So if they get new players or they're trying to send people out on their first hunt, or maybe not, they're not abiding by or adhering to the normalcy that we would see in like the first two Predator movies.
Mm-hmm.
Like the way they fight, the gear and the gadgets that they use is completely different. So I
Mm-hmm.
think what happens is, without coming out and telling us, they're using groups of predators who don't adhere to any rules or honor codes. So you get this mix of a bunch of predators that are full of themselves, who go on hunts and go after things, and they're just way too overconfident. And then they find themselves in these weird positions where they just get completely outclassed by the protagonist's luck. And that's what I mean. We are hitting a plateau in unique storytelling and perspective of the Yautja because the predators in 2018, where they're dropped off on that planet and they're hunted by those bad bloods, you know what I'm saying? They have a jungle hunter predator strung up like
Yeah.
Lawrence Fishburne said it himself, like it's some type of blood feud.
Mm-hmm.
Like those aren't typical, you know what I'm saying, honor bound predators.
Right.
So like you get a little different taste.
I get that. I do
But
get
see,
that.
but surface level, the average fan, like they enjoyed the project for what it was instead of trying to rationalize or understand what we're actually getting lore wise and how it pertains to other material that we've gotten or will get.
Yeah. What I'm really getting at, you know, because we don't need to go through the rest of that film to break it down, because I've pretty much, you know, said all of my grievances with the film, because the end of it doesn't really make it any better or worse when all
No,
three.
it's just an homage to Arnold, and I get it, but I was really looking for something different there, especially going back and watching it again, trying to freshen up on stuff, getting ready for this. But
Yeah. Nah, but my overall issue is, you know, hinting to your point, is that Hollywood is not being creative, because part of what made Predators 1 and 2 interesting is that Predator 1 was current time, right? When they did the
mm-hmm.
sequel, they went into the future at that time, because it was like 91, 92 when Predator 2 came out. It was somewhere between 90 and 92. But when
Mm-hmm.
that sequel came out, they sped it up to what, 1997. So even though
I believe so.
yeah, I don't even though technology, you know, wasn't really that much
Those are the
different.
only two films that I didn't touch on or try to do any research on. I'll just kind of let that up to you because that's your field.
Well, yeah, but you know, but the thing is that with these predators, what it always comes down to is that they're always going to have superior technology, and the way that they move is that they will, you know, and these films did capture this. So let me say that, but they always pick one out of the group that they are toying with to get them down to a final battle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this movie showcased that to a point, but it just did it in a very hard to grasp, you know, standpoint for me. I like it just wasn't cohesive enough. And I really think that what's happening with the Predator franchise is that because we're not getting good Predator content in terms of film, like Predators was good, but the Predator was like it sucked, like it was bad, and because we had that bad movie, and then we had to follow up Prey. Like Prey was okay, but I have a problem with them messing with the established canon that was in the comics. But again, that's just me. But people are now used to mediocre Predator films, and I just have a problem with that. Like I really do. Like we have to suspend our imagination too much in order to see these predators get taken down. Um, because that seems to be the crux of it all. Because even thinking about the predator, think about the fact that like what they went up against, bro, and that they were able to beat this dude. And usually, yes, does it come down to overconfidence, ego, and whatnot? Sure, but this was a super predator, taller, bigger, stronger, faster. Like the imagination shift that we have to make for this dude after they showcase just how strong, powerful, smart, intelligent, and like how he was wiping people out, that this group of misfits were able to take him down, and the whole spectrum thing. Like, come on, man, come on. So, but moving forward, then this is where I think this is going to be your strong point. Did Predator Killer of Killers do a good enough job to connect to the overall lore, or how do you feel it connected to the overall lore?
Well, I will say this: there's a lot of. Well, let me start off by saying, in terms of Predator lore, period, there isn't a lot to go off of. But the things that they do have, there is a lot of interconnectedness, including across films, games, and comics. They pull from a lot of things, whether it's canon or not. They do a lot of that,
Mm-hmm.
and that is very prevalent in Killer of Killers. Like I want to start off with the flintlock pistol, the black powder gun. I'm so tired of seeing that, bro.
Yeah,
Oh my god.
yeah.
What give us some significance. What how many times has it been on screen now?
Three,
Is this the third?
third, yeah,
For what? Especially for a guy who was coming from a time period, like you said, they're flying airplanes. And you gave this boy a black powder gun?
yeah. And I took it as that was like supposed to be a ha ha funny moment.
Right. But what is this again, what is the significance of the pistol other than it just being an Easter egg?
Yeah.
That's it. Then like that's one of the things I'm getting irritated with when it concerns lore.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say the biggest thing they gave us, not even the amount of predators we've seen, or the fact that they're this rogue clan of bad bloods doing whatever they want. It's the cryo sleep.
Yeah, that was.
Now you would assume that that's what happened in the predators when they dropped them off on that planet. You would assume like we just see them falling out of the sky and they land there, but probably they were in cryo sleep when they got grabbed.
Yeah.
So I find that to be really interesting, and they could do a lot with that in the future. And depending on who they had in that last cryo chamber, like I don't know if that was some foreshadowing to who that could be, or if that's a new player coming later on, but
A new
it's a
player.
lot of possibilities.
Yeah, and my thing with the cryo thing, it actually to me works against the film because again, you have this superior technology, and you have gone so far back in time when humans were primitive, more primitive than what we are in terms of how we can stand up for ourselves, right?
Mhm.
And you're losing to us. It just, I,
But the only and I'm not using this to justify why it is the way it is, but ultimately the trend that I'm seeing is we always end up in that type of scenario because it's some bad blood, quote unquote, predators. Some predators that don't adhere to any type of honor code or rules from their clan. That's why I feel like we got way different types of predators in the first two films.
because but see,
They, they're from a specific place. Even the AVP, regardless of what people want to say about the movie, like
mm,
what we got from the Predators, like that tone was there. It didn't feel like some BS.
yeah,
Even though like the threat was the aliens, you still got something that made you feel like it was believable what was happening.
Yeah, because I can buy, the Predators being outsmarted, because that and that's why I really like the first film, because Arnold Schwarzenegger's character, and we talked about this offline. His character had like the most character growth once everybody else in his unit was gone, right? And he's the sole man that's there and having to take this thing down. And you end up seeing the different ways in which he deduces how to take this thing on. And the thing is, he's using primitive, methods to go against this thing. And
Right.
I think that's why this film works, is because he went to a very basic way of hunting a hunter and using its technology against it. So he figured out that it must see in, a spectrum of heat. And again, that's a whole thing. Well, I'm not even gonna get into that point because I just get us straying further, because I was gonna say, like, they can kind of change this, like, how they see in the spectrum when they have the mask on, but leaving that alone.
Right.
But he gets bows and arrows. He plants explosives. He, is using the jungle against the predator until they have a final showdown. And because of that, this predator ends up having like the utmost respect for him and wants to see him on equal, footing. So meaning, like,
Right.
because
And
literally,
and
go ahead.
that's an aspect that we'll never get in these other films that we've gotten recently in time, because those type of predators don't adhere to any type of honor. Because like it doesn't mean anything to shoot a fair one. They're gonna do whatever BS they feel is necessary, but the whole time they're arrogant
Yeah,
and way too full of themselves. So like they find themselves in these weird positions where they're just
but
completely overpowered and outsmarted, and just by sheer luck, you're defeated. It's
but
crazy.
that's what makes it so hard to believe that they're getting beat, bro. Because if they're not adhering to the regular honor code, like, what are we doing? Because like a
But
rogue predator that is literally out to just, like, I don't give a fuck.
it's such a catch-22 because it's not explained. You can't find this information anywhere, but it almost begins to feel as if the clans have whatever the honor code or the rules are. There has to be some level of training or preparation that these young ones go through before they go out.
Yes, yes.
That they learn something from their elders. Like there has to be something. So whatever the process is or the learning curve for the bad bloods is absent. So
Yeah,
you get these really just
I guess, man. I
that, but that's not an excuse. It's just me trying to rationalize what is actually happening. Because like I said, like the Predator lore is just so in a box with a very little to nothing in it that has to do with them.
mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
it's hard trying to sift through the BS to understand what we're actually getting. But doing the research for this episode, like I came across some things, but the main thing I want to talk about is toward the end.
Mm-hmm. Which is,
What is the significance of that clan of predators? Why aren't they labeled bad bloods? Like why do we have to deduce or come to the conclusion on our own that
I don't
these
know.
aren't the honorable hunter type?
I don't know if they were bad blood. Like, I don't know. Like, because they had a
Because they're, they're
society
they're
going
they're
on.
taking human prisoners, making them fight in a 3v1 versus everybody gladiator type deal, and then you get to fight the big dog. That sounds weird.
It does. It does.
That
And
doesn't sound like something like you would see from the elders in Predator 2 or an Alien versus Predator. Like that's not how they move.
okay. So yeah, so once you mention the Elder and Predator 2, that makes sense because they let Danny Glover go, right? And
You know what I'm saying? They
yeah,
have respect
that's
for
true.
actual warriors who could compete.
That's true.
Like
So
just like Sanaa Lathan, things like they have a certain type of structure about how they go about things.
yeah,
But
fair.
surface level fans and people who just want to enjoy the project, so they're not worried about that type of stuff. It's people
Yeah,
like us that tend to have an issue and have to try to figure out what's actually going on,
yeah.
especially as
Nah.
it pertains to lore.
So yeah, you saying that makes it make perfect sense. Like that's
Yeah,
literally the key difference between the two. Like, yeah, so this group, they don't care. Like,
Yeah.
they're basically
Tell
like,
tell
oh,
tell us
you beat
tell us
us?
the significance.
Yeah, they're like, they
Tell
beat
us
us.
the significance of this clan. Yeah.
Yeah, like tell us, give us more. Like, because it's like you would probably be better off dying because you're going to be bound to them because they're not going to let you go. Because even in Predators, I don't know how Royce thought that they were going to get like, okay, you get off the planet. Do you even know how to get back to Earth, bro? Like, what did you?
Okay. All right now
But
when I
that's getting too
watched that,
far. Mm-hmm.
from what I got from it, it seems as if the predator that he released, he programmed it in his gauntlet and he
Okay.
showed Earth. I'm assuming that boy's on autopilot because it still took off without him.
That's true. That's true.
That's the only way it makes sense.
Yeah, man. Because when Lawrence Fishburne's character, when he's talking about I've been here for a few seasons, like, good lord, dude, like how
Yeah,
long you?
hey, I'm not gonna. He my favorite part of the movie, man.
He was hilarious, and the way he went out, bro, it was like, damn. But
So wild.
yeah, it was still funny, but I think for me with the lore aspect, the most interesting part was the cryo stuff. But it's also, again, the most problematic because if you've been doing this for this long, technological wise, you should never have been losing to us. So why you have these droves and droves of potential humans and other beings, that's problematic for me. That's really problematic for me because it's showcasing that you have been going through interstellar travel for centuries, okay? And you've been being beaten by, at least, with us, by extremely like primitive technology. Like even in Prey, bro, when he had the arrows instead of lasers, I was kind of thrown by that. I was kind of thrown by that. I was like, oh, okay.
See, and that's another aspect that is, and it goes back to my last point. Like, what is the significance? Like, you have to give us something to lean on so we can understand the difference and we can differentiate ourselves as the viewer, like what we're getting from this predator. Because obviously he's different. He's from somewhere else. He's not a jungle hunter predator. And
Yeah.
the way it's described in the synopsis, this clan is from a
Are you
desert.
are you talking
They're
about?
less
Are you
and they're
talking about
less
the?
technologically advanced. But like, what clan is that? Where is he actually from? Like, why
Are you talking about
does
the
he
new
look
movie?
exactly? Just because he's from somewhere different in a different clan doesn't give us much to lean on about why he got his ass whooped either.
Are you talking about the new movie? Which one are you talking about?
No, pray.
Oh, Prey. Yeah, I took like the way that he looked. He was definitely different. You know what I'm saying? But like what I would, and that's
That's not enough to go on.
yeah, and what's problematic about the Predator films in this instance, like as they've gone on, we don't get a lot of or if we don't get any communication with them really. So that's the one thing that this new film brought forth is that they do have a language and they do speak to each other. Because as far as I remember, predators don't. Well, let's not even get into that.
Just a bunch of clicks and snarls and low growls.
But it's supposedly like a highly efficient language in that like the way that we speak is considered primitive.
Mm-hmm.
But not getting too far into that. But that was the one thing that I did found interesting is that now they're actually giving them a language to speak, and they have ways to decode our languages or other languages and make it make sense to them and vice versa. Like I thought that was kind of cool. But um yeah, that's the only thing, lore wise that I felt like was cool. But again, the cryo thing just makes it more problematic than good because again, superior technology, and I think they need to make it clear that when they're hunting, that they're using inferior methods to make it more enjoyable. Like I don't feel like I should have to use head cannon to make that deduction for myself.
And that's my main point about clarifying what type of predator we are seeing and where they're from. Because again, I think the best example you have is the predator ship fighting the warthogs is he's using like retractable harpoons. He could just call them back. That seems strange when they have like plasma cannons and you could turn it into a hand cannon. Like you shoot energy based weapons, but in your ship, I think it's just one of those.
I wish you could see my face because that when they was doing that, I wanted to turn the damn thing off.
It's one of those weird things that I want to connect to them not being any type of honor bound.
Mm-hmm.
I think a situation like that is specifically because they're doing it just to do it because they can, not because I think
But
they're just doing
bro,
it out of fun.
a spaceship. Like I understand that was the smaller ship, so I'm not saying that that's the one that is traveling.
No, but there's no way that thing can't shoot some type of energy based or plasma based. But again, it goes back to what is the significance of these types of predators and
Mm-hmm.
why they're doing things the way they're doing them.
Yeah. Nah.
It shouldn't have to take a guy like me and you to give it everything we got to understand the lore about why it looks the way it looks.
Yeah.
That's not fair, and that's not fair to the other audience members either, because a lot of people probably don't even actually know what they're looking at. They're just enjoying the show.
Mm-hmm.
Because at this point, I feel like Killers of Killers was just for people to be entertained at a surface level.
Yeah. I agree
And
with that.
they used a lot of fluff at the end to show like we can take this in so many different ways. I feel like it opened up that universe to have a chance to have more lore behind it. It may not be the best way to do it,
Mm-hmm.
but in the same breath, like I can understand why they would make a decision like that, like the cryo sleep thing. Like that's something old from Dark Horse comics
Mm-hmm.
that brought Dutch's brother into canon in the
Mm-hmm.
comic books.
Mm-hmm.
Dark Horse Comics, Concrete Jungle. Like that's how he comes into canon. And at the end of his story, looking for his brother for how many years, he ends up on cryo sleep and wakes up on an alien planet, on a foreign planet.
Mm-hmm.
Like I get and understand like the things they're pulling, but I I'm gonna be nice and just say 90% of people don't know that stuff.
No, they don't.
So
Yeah.
it's not significant to the audience. It's just like, oh, they're just hoping it's Dutch or Danny Glover in the cryo chamber because they want to see their characters, and they're just old as shit now.
Yeah, yeah, nah. Yeah, any type of Arnold or Danny involvement would have to be
It would
animation.
be in the animation
Yeah,
because they do have stories that go off of the screen into the comics, but that's neither here nor there.
yeah. So moving on to our last part of the topics. How did we feel about future projects in connection with this film? So that means, we're going to get into Badlands and anything that comes after. So I'll let you start off. Are you feeling positive? Are you feeling like we have some momentum going? What are your thoughts?
Honestly, I believe we're getting the exact opposite in Badlands.
Mm-hmm.
I think for the first time, we're getting a predator perspective and point of view
Mm-hmm.
for a film. And everything that we've been getting and talking about with these last 3 or 4 movies is going to be the exact opposite.
Okay.
Besides about how people feel for the appearance of said protagonist,
Yeah.
I wholeheartedly believe like this is the Predator movie and story that everybody's been waiting on for years,
Mm-hmm.
and hopefully this is what they build off of. Because from what I'm seeing, and like how I talked about earlier about how a lot of the lore is interconnected, even though it's not a lot of it. A lot of things intersect.
Mm-hmm.
I believe we got a great chance for that to happen to here too.
Okay. So for me, I think it's going to be a good film, Badlands. I do think that people overreacted about the look of the Predator main character that's going to be presented in the film.
Can I just say something about that?
Yeah, go ahead. Cause go ahead. Go ahead.
Out of all, like I can it obviously looks different.
Yes.
And I'm not going to get on here and gloat about how I understood and knew what it was about and being corroborated by the director not shortly after. Like that's not the point. The point is predators have always been ugly. They're some of the ugliest creatures I've ever seen
I don't
on a
know.
screen.
I don't know where
Besides,
you. Yeah, I don't know where
besides
you're going with
xenomorphs
this.
themselves,
Yeah, I don't know where you're going with this, but go ahead.
people talking about he looks feminine, he looks too human. It's this, it's that. People making memes, throwing an afro on him. Now in the history of all Predator merch, movies, like TV, whatever you want to name, like as badass as they are, they've always been ugly.
Yeah.
And the main Predator in Badlands, he's just as ugly as the motherfuckers.
It's just tinier. Where like to me, it without giving the whole damn movie away, it's to me it's showcasing that this is a runt, and like
That's the
probably
specifics.
well, I mean
Because
that's
he really the way it's described, he's young.
yeah.
So like it makes sense. Like his features are a little softer. Like he might not have a prominent brow ridge, so you can see his eyes more. Like no, he doesn't have a head crest yet, because he probably has to grow into it. But
Maybe.
like you said, the special thing about it is he's a runt, so he's already behind the curve.
Yeah.
Even more so, besides the fact that he's a youngin.
Yeah.
This is the youngest player we ever going to see on the screen. Like
Yeah.
I can't wrap my head around the instance that I had where a guy literally on the post what I'm talking about is like,
Here we go.
so like, is his head ever gonna grow? Like, is he ever gonna get a head crest? I'm like, bro, had to go to his profile and screenshot him. Like,
Here we go.
did you have a hairline when you were 13 or 14? Because you're looking mighty bald right now.
See,
like, make it make sense, bro. Like, where's the common sense?
Why you got to go on the man's personal appearance?
Because I'm trying to make 2 + 2 = 2. Like,
yeah, but right now what we're seeing is
I
2
can't even
plus
find
2
the words.
equals
It's
James
so
being petty.
baffling to me how people can have such a wide opinion about something, and it's already established as being ugly.
Well, I don't think they're focused on them like ugly. It's just that they wanted him to look like predators of past. And I think that from a storytelling perspective, he's not supposed to. So I just think people should have slowed down and like given the movie chance to come out.
But that is my main point, though, because
like let us get the narrative.
Let's do a self-reflection, guys. What did you look like when you were 11, 12, 13 compared to your 40-year-old self? Let's check them hairline measurements.
Yeah, but let's but when it comes to a runt, they're never going to be the full size of a regular size anything, right?
Right. So, like, their maturity is going to come way later compared to anyone else.
Maybe. It depends. Like we have, even in our own species, you have people who, I'm not trying to be funny, but are undersized in comparison to what's considered normal. And
Absolutely.
So even though they mature and they get older and they age and things like that, there's a certain height that they just don't go past. They peak and have certain features. There's some people that have certain genetic, issues where they look like children their whole lives. And
that's a fair point, and I'm not looking at it that way.
The
way I'm interpreting it is as they have this protagonist predator stuck in a box where he won't be allowed to make any type of growth because he has a hairline and softer eyes than the rest of the ugly bastards we've ever seen on screen.
Yeah, but I just think
that's just kind of wild to me.
Yeah, but I really do think that from a storytelling perspective, that's what's going to make this movie good and unique. Is that this being or this predator is going to be different from the ones that we have been following thus far, because all of them have been fully grown, mature, or a little bigger and stronger and stuff, and he's going to be the only one that is going to have some sort of quote unquote inefficiencies as it pertains to the rest of what we've seen. So I'm looking.
He's trying to go out and prove himself, and the way it's set up, it looks like he's going against the wishes and the rules of the honor code of his clan. And he's stepping out to prove himself.
Yeah, maybe. We don't know.
That.
But like, and I don't even want to be spoiled. I want to go into it fresh. But I was just honestly, like I said, I was just really caught off guard by how much the online community reacted to the trailers, and that's what I really have an issue with, like trailer culture, as it pertains to movies and film right now, because I feel like, without getting too deep, that they are they usually show you everything that's kind of going to happen with a movie from beginning to end, beginning, middle, end. So you already kind of get a glimpse of what the movie is going to be about and how it's, what's going to happen and stuff like that. And it really gives people, and to me, a false sense of how good or how bad the movie's going to be. And more
Uh-huh.
times than not, I think people misfire and misjudge by the trailers. Like, prime example, our last podcast was talking about, Star Wars and the sequels. We
Mhm.
talked about how fire the trailer was for The Force Awakens. And then,
Absolutely.
we get what we get. And could it have been at, at the time that we got the trailer? Because it was like a whole other year and some change before we even got the movie released, when they teased that trailer, that first one. So could the movie have been going in a totally different direction at the time that they were filming and stuff? Sure. But what we ended up getting was, something that ultimately ended up dividing the fan base. But the trailer was, was fire. I can't think of a movie where the trailer was bad and the movie ended up being good. But long story short,
That's a tough one. That's a good
yeah.
question.
But long story short, I am excited for this future, because if we continue to get movies that are from the Predator standpoint and they build on that and keep it going, then I think that we have a good trilogy set up. I don't necessarily want to go back into revisiting it from a human point of view unless we see some technological advances in the future,
Mm.
because we've
That's
like
one
you
of those
said, we've
things
seen
where
the same
I
formula.
doubt. I, it's one of those things where I doubt, because based on the little research that I did and the interconnectedness of the little bit of lore we do have, so that Predators movie with the Super Predator, and that company doing all that Predator research and stuff like that,
Yeah,
that they ended up with that Predator wrist gauntlet suit
yeah.
in the comics. In Dutch's story, eventually he come across them. They're called Stargazer, and
Mm-hmm.
he shuts that down. They don't even exist after a certain point in time because they're a threat and, an escalation of what could be happening between Earth and the predators as it stands.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
Dutch and his team of people that hunt predators, they shut that stuff down.
yeah,
But again, that's one of those things where you got to look for it to know. Like
yeah.
it's not just pull outright to it. You have to dig for information like
Yeah,
that.
Predator lore is all over the place, because you do have novels, you definitely
Mm-hmm.
got comics, like you said, you have video games, and you have movies. That's why it's very hard for me to accept that Hollywood just can't get it right. But if they
Right.
get back into the business of telling good stories as opposed to focusing on other things, to me, like merchandising, even though I don't think merchandising was it the reason why we ended up getting a bad The Predator film. I really,
No, but
but it was a lot of
they
corporate meddling.
the merchandising aspect is so weird because even before I was born, I know it. Even during the time when I was growing up,
You knew before you were born.
I remember specifically about alien toys and predator toys and things like there was a big market there for that stuff.
But they
Like
did that
the Alien
after the
vs Predator
movie's release,
games.
though. And see, I was around during that time, and I was really actually confused as a kid when the Alien toys were coming out. But somehow Hollywood figured out that teenage boys, at minimum, had seen these films. So I don't that's why I don't understand, like, kind of going backwards, why AVP was PG-13.
I hear you. That makes absolute sense. The only thing I really want to add or touch on lastly was what we did get in the trailer that a lot of people are missing or not talking about or discussing because they're too hyper fixated on one thing, and that is the predator with the white locks, the bone white locks, the black armor, the red lights.
It's all in the trailer.
That's just, yes.
I mean, that's clearly an elder.
Ah, I don't know. I feel like he's older than that. This is just speculation
So it's
based
older
on
than
what
the
I've
elder.
seen. Yeah, like he's either an ancient
Man.
or a king. Like the way it's described, he's one of the ones that don't go out and do anything. And if he does, it's just to give younger players knowledge, or quote unquote, they'll do a last hunt,
Hmm.
meaning they'll go out up against something where they know they can't win, type deal.
Hmm.
And I feel like the trailer really sets that tone up because in the still shot for the trailer of the movie, you see our protagonist kneeling down, and he has that laser red sword that the elder or ancients carry.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to see how that transpires. But I think we're getting the oldest predator we've ever seen and the youngest we've ever seen on screen at the same time.
Okay.
And it's going to be told from their perspective. I think that's some of the greatest things they could have ever done with the franchise.
Okay. All right. Well, for me, man, I honestly, I don't have anything else to add, to the conversation at this point. Yeah, my last thoughts are killers, trash. But I am glad that it was a hit to everybody else, not us. Because if it wasn't a hit, then I think that the Predator franchise in general would be stalled out. So it's one of those things where I'm okay with not having been the one to enjoy it. Uh, because it does mean that we're going to get more content and give them an opportunity to get it right. Because like I said, Prey wasn't that bad. I personally, not even. Let me not even say that. Let me back up. Prey was good. I just have a problem with the technology thing. That's my biggest hang up with the film. But overall, it was done well. So let me put that out there. So I believe that they have the capability of making a good Predator film. I believe Badlands is going to be a good Predator film. Unfortunately, I'm just not in love with Killer of Killers. So it is what it is. But the audience, the people who did watch it, more people liked it than not. So I'm willing to
And
see
yeah,
where it
and
goes.
again, I just think it was just for pure entertainment. I don't think Killer of Killers was something that we're supposed to go into a deep dive or an iceberg type level of information with. Even though those elements are there,
Yeah.
but again, I don't think that movie was for us in particular.
Well, yeah, I mean, just yeah, I can see that because Hollywood is doing that
Badlands
thing.
and like the Easter eggs and things that we see in that trailer, I feel like there's so much there, and they're gonna take it in a direction that we really weren't expecting. Like again, this is gonna be the first time where the predator is the protagonist.
Yeah,
We're following a predator,
yeah,
so
yeah. Well, all right, man. So I think that concludes the episode for this week, man. I do hope that the audience has enjoyed it. Please do let us know in the comments what you all think of our conversation, the points that we made, good or bad. We want to hear from you. So please let us know. You can hit us up in the comments. I say that everybody goes at James, but that's a whole nother discussion. um, Let us know what kind of topics you want us to cover. We're open for anything. We're both pretty much film nerds, Star Wars nerds, anime nerds. We both deep dive into film and manga,
everything is
anime.
on the table.
Yeah, anything,
So
anything,
whatever it
everything.
is, we will cover it.
Yeah. Be on the lookout for us because once this Superman movie drops, there's going to be fun content to absorb because James does not like this iteration of Superman before this movie has come out. So be on the lookout for that.
Mm, mm, mm.
But now, this is your boy James and Rob signing off. We hope you have a good one, and we'll catch you later.